Today I am going to tell you a true story. A story so shocking that many people find it hard to believe after hearing it. It leaves people surprised, disturbed, and deeply worried that such things could happen in the real world. This is a story where wealth, power, and exploitation were deeply connected. A story that challenges what many people believe about justice and influence. For an ordinary person, it may sound impossible, like something from a dark movie or hidden history. But this is not fiction. This is a bitter reality that the world has had to face.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make it.
What if the war you see on your screen is only part of the story? What if behind the explosions, the destroyed cities, and the daily headlines, there are deeper reasons that are rarely discussed openly? The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is often presented as a simple battle over territory. But the reality is far more complex. This is not just a fight over land. It is a clash of history, security fears, political identity, and global power balance. When Russian forces launched a full-scale invasion in 2022, the world was shocked. Governments imposed sanctions, weapons flowed into Ukraine, and energy markets trembled. But this war did not begin in one night. Its roots stretch back decades, to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. When new borders were drawn and old rivalries were left unresolved, Ukraine emerged as an independent nation. It's positioned strategically between Russia and Europe, and over time it began moving closer to Western institutions. That shift became one of the central tensions in the region. Russia argues that the expansion of NATO toward its borders threatens its national security. Ukraine argues that as a sovereign country, it has the right to choose its own alliances and future. Meanwhile, Western countries say they are defending international law and territorial integrity. But beneath these public arguments are deeper geopolitical calculations, control of energy routes, influence over Eastern Europe, military positioning, and the long-term balance of global power. This war has reshaped global politics, disrupted food supplies, triggered energy crises, and pushed major powers into a new era of tension. To truly understand what is happening, we must look beyond headlines and examine the historical fears, strategic interests, and global ambitions that fuel this conflict. Only then can we begin to understand the real reasons behind the war, the reasons no one talks about openly, but that shape every decision being made today. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, it wasn't just a political breakup, it was a psychological earthquake. 15 new countries emerged from its shadow, including Ukraine. For many Ukrainians, independence meant freedom, identity, and a chance to build a democratic future aligned with Europe. But for Russia, the fall of the Soviet Union was not liberation, it was humiliation. President Vladimir Putin later called it the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. That sentence alone tells you everything about the mindset driving today's war. In the 1990s, Ukraine inherited the world's third-largest nuclear arsenal. But under the Budapest Memorandum, Ukraine gave up those weapons in exchange for security assurances from Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. On paper, it looked like a smart move toward global stability. In reality, it left Ukraine vulnerable. When Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and later launched a full-scale invasion in 2022, many Ukrainians looked back at that agreement with regret. This chapter is about broken promises and shifting power. Russia believed Ukraine slipping toward the West was a threat to its sphere of influence. Ukraine believed choosing its own future was its sovereign right. The tension between these two visions, empire versus independence, set the stage for a conflict that would shake the entire world. At the heart of the conflict lies one word: NATO. Formed in 1949 as a military alliance against the Soviet Union, NATO expanded eastward after the Cold War. Countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Baltic states joined. From their perspective, NATO membership meant protection from a historically aggressive neighbor. From Russia's perspective, it felt like betrayal. Russian leaders argue that Western officials informally promised NATO would not expand 1 inch eastward after German reunification. Western leaders deny any binding agreement. Whether promise or misunderstanding, the result is clear. Moscow saw NATO's expansion as strategic encirclement. Imagine a rival military alliance moving closer and closer to your borders. That fear, real or exaggerated, became central to Russian security thinking. Ukraine's interest in joining NATO was a red line for Moscow. When pro-Western protests, known as the Euromaidan movement, erupted in Kyiv in 2013-2014, leading to the removal of a pro-Russian president, Russia interpreted it as a Western-backed coup. Soon after, Russia annexed Crimea and supported separatists in eastern Ukraine. For the Kremlin, this was defensive strategy. For Ukraine and the West, it was aggression. NATO expansion is not the only reason for the war, but it is one of the loudest arguments Russia uses to justify its actions. The question remains, was NATO a shield for smaller nations, or a spark that ignited deeper insecurity? In 2014, the world watched in disbelief as Russian troops without official insignia took control of the Crimean Peninsula. Soon after, Russia formally annexed Crimea following a disputed referendum. This marked the first time since World War II that a European country had seized territory from another by force. Crimea is not just land. It holds the strategic port of Sevastopol, home to Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Losing influence over Crimea would mean losing a critical naval foothold. For Moscow, that was unacceptable. For Ukraine, it was a violation of sovereignty. The annexation triggered international sanctions and froze relations between Russia and the West. But it also sent a powerful message. Russia was willing to redraw borders. Fighting soon erupted in eastern Ukraine's Donbas region, where Russian-backed separatists declared independence. A low-intensity war simmered for 8 years, largely ignored by much of the world. The Minsk agreements attempted to end the fighting, but they never fully succeeded. Instead, the conflict hardened attitudes on both sides. Ukraine strengthened its military. Russia prepared for something bigger. Crimea was not the end. It was the beginning of a long and dangerous escalation. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Missiles struck major cities. Tanks crossed borders from multiple directions. President Volodymyr Zelensky declared martial law and chose to remain in Kyiv, despite reports that he was a top target. Russia described the invasion as a special military operation aimed at denazification and demilitarization. Ukraine and most of the world saw it as an unprovoked war of aggression. What many expected to be a quick takeover turned into fierce resistance. Ukrainian forces, supported by Western weapons, held their ground. The war quickly became a battle of narratives. Russia claimed it was protecting Russian-speaking populations and preventing NATO expansion. Ukraine framed it as a fight for national survival. Images of destroyed cities like Mariupol and Bucha shocked the world and fueled global outrage. Sanctions hit Russia's economy. Energy markets were disrupted. Millions of Ukrainians fled their homes. The invasion transformed a regional conflict into a global crisis. It also revealed something unexpected. Ukraine was not as weak as many assumed, and Russia was not as unstoppable as feared. Although no NATO troops directly entered the war, Western countries provided billions in military and financial aid to Ukraine. The United States, European Union members, and others supplied advanced weapon systems, intelligence, and training. This turned the conflict into a proxy battleground between Russia and the West. Meanwhile, countries like China took a more cautious stance. China called for peace talks while maintaining economic ties with Russia. Other nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America avoided choosing sides, focusing instead on food and energy security. The war disrupted global grain exports as Ukraine is a major supplier of wheat and corn. Energy prices surged, affecting economies worldwide. Suddenly, this was not just Europe's problem, it was everyone's. This chapter shows how modern wars rarely stay local. In a connected world, conflict spreads through trade, energy, and diplomacy. The Russia-Ukraine war became a test of global alliances, and a preview of how future geopolitical rivalries might unfold. Beyond missiles and tanks, another war is being fought online. Social media became a battlefield for narratives. Both sides use propaganda, digital campaigns, and strategic messaging to influence public opinion. President Zelensky mastered global communication, addressing parliaments worldwide via video link. His speeches framed Ukraine's struggle as part of a broader fight for democracy. Russia, on the other hand, tightened media control at home and pushed its own version of events. Cyber attacks targeted infrastructure, government networks, and communication systems. Hackers aligned with different sides attempted to disrupt operations. The digital dimension of this conflict highlights how warfare has evolved. Winning the information war can shape international support and domestic morale. In many ways, perception is power. This conflict proves that controlling the narrative can be as important as controlling territory. Behind strategy and politics are real human lives. Millions of Ukrainians became refugees. Families were separated. Cities were reduced to rubble. Civilian casualties mounted. Soldiers on both sides faced brutal trench warfare reminiscent of World War I, the psychological toll trauma. Grief and displacement will last generations. Infrastructure damage will take years, perhaps decades, to rebuild. This chapter reminds viewers that beyond geopolitics lies suffering. War statistics can numb us, but each number represents a person. The human cost is the heaviest price of all. Can this war end? Diplomacy remains difficult. Ukraine demands restoration of its territorial integrity. Russia insists on security guarantees and recognition of its claims. Some propose negotiated settlements. Others argue that peace without justice invites future aggression. The path forward may involve ceasefires, international mediation, and long-term security frameworks. True resolution requires addressing underlying fears, Russia's security concerns, and Ukraine's right to sovereignty. Without trust, agreements remain fragile. The Russia-Ukraine war is more than a regional dispute. It is a clash of visions about power, borders, and the future world order. How it ends will shape global politics for decades to come. The real reasons behind this war are layered: history, identity, security, power, and pride. It is not a simple story of good versus evil, nor is it just about territory. It is about a changing world struggling to define its rules. Understanding this conflict means understanding our future. As we reach the end of this discussion, one thing is undeniable. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is far more than a regional war. It is a turning point in global history. This war has exposed deep fractures in international politics, challenged the balance of power, and forced nations around the world to choose sides or carefully walk a neutral line. It has reshaped military alliances, accelerated energy transitions, and revived fears that many believed had ended with the Cold War. But beyond geopolitics and strategy, there is a human reality that cannot be ignored. Cities have been destroyed, families displaced, and thousands of lives changed forever. Political leaders speak in terms of security, sovereignty, and influence, but ordinary people pay the highest price. The longer the war continues, the deeper the wounds become. Not just in Ukraine and Russia, but across the global economy and international trust. The real reasons behind this war: security concerns, NATO expansion debates, historical identity, energy control, and global power rivalry reveal the complexity of modern conflicts. There are no simple answers, and there are no easy solutions. Peace will require compromise, courage, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths on all sides. The question now is not only how this war will end, but what kind of world will emerge from it. Will it lead to deeper division and a new era of confrontation, or will it prompt global leaders to reassess security, cooperation, and diplomacy in a rapidly changing world? History will judge the decisions being made today, and the outcome of this conflict will shape international politics for generations to come.
Friends, this video was prepared for education and truly correcting information and knowledge. If you like this video, please follow and subscribe for our favorite comments.